I really like helping people accomplishing things that they want to accomplish in life and in a legal matter, obviously, and basically get that assistance. Immigration law and helping immigrants getting lawful status, getting work visas, getting temporary visas to come to U.S. Wait for a simple family petition for a spouse. If we would take anywhere between 8 months to a year, now we're seeing a year and a half and 2 years.
Good morning from San Diego. My name is Mehran Fardis. This is the Care Law Group episode of our immigration session, and today I'm here with one of my colleagues and good friends, Sam. So Sam is an immigration attorney currently practicing in Arizona, but immigration is federal law, so his advice would be valid for anywhere in the US. So Sam, can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you went to school, where you studied law?
So I went to my undergrad. I went to San Francisco State University. I majored in political science.
Nice.
And after graduation, applied for law school after the LSAT exam. Got into a lot of places, but I chose Arizona. Studied at Arizona Summit Law School. Graduated after 2.5 years. And currently live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I practice immigration law.
2.5 years?
Yes.
That's shorter than 3 years.
Yes, I started taking summer courses. Made it a little faster.
Some of us could learn some stuff from this. So you finished law school a few years ago.
Yes.
You took a bunch of bar exams.
Yes.
And you're now licensed to practice in what, 30 states?
Yeah, I could practice in 30 states.
That's
Yeah.
How's that? What states?
Arizona is part of a UBE jurisdiction.
Okay.
A UBE jurisdiction is basically Arizona and 29 other states that administer the same bar exam.
Okay.
So if you score high enough, you're able to transfer that score without taking an exam to those states that are part of the UBE
Okay, so
jurisdiction.
it's based on your score.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. So you did that 2 years ago?
Yes.
What made you decide to practice immigration and not criminal law or contract or patent? Why immigration?
So, as you know, I'm an immigrant myself. I went
Yes.
through the process myself. I
Yes.
somewhat was familiar with it prior to practicing immigration law. And I was very interested in doing immigration law and helping immigrants getting lawful status, getting work visas, getting temporary visas to come to U.S. because the U.S. is the land of opportunities.
Okay.
Everybody wants to end up here.
Right. So, being an immigrant yourself, like me, not only we've been through the channels ourselves, it gives you I don't want to say edge, but it gives you some advantage to understand how it feels to be on the other side. An important role of an attorney is to understand their clients, understand what is it that they're dealing with, what are the predicaments. Being in the shoes of a client is very important. Of course, anybody can understand the predicament of another person, but having experienced it personally gives you an edge. So in some ways, I think people that are immigrants themselves make very good immigration attorneys because they level with the client a lot better. Correct?
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, not that non-immigrants don't have that ability, but immigrants just have a more sensible approach to that. I think, it's just my opinion. Now, what areas of immigration do you focus on primarily now?
Right now, I mean, it's all across the board on immigration category. We do the administrative stuff, which is the family petition, the visas, the non-defensive approach to obtaining a visa or status.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you explain to our audience a little more basic understanding of immigration law? How is it structured? When it's federal, what does that mean, federal? Where are the rules coming from? It's like a step back. Imagine we don't know exactly what immigration is. Who is the governing body?
So immigration falls under the jurisdiction of federal government.
Okay.
States cannot actually have their own laws regarding an immigration.
Okay.
It's strictly federal law, and
what are the agencies governing immigration?
we have the Department of Homeland Security,
Which is the umbrella.
exactly umbrella.
Okay.
Yeah, and then under that it comes the ICE, which is people familiar with.
Customs enforcement and immigration customs.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's also United States UCIS.
Okay. So that's like the administrative body that kind of interviews people and grants.
Exactly. They more administer or control the applications, the fees for the different kind of applications, different kind of family petitions, a relative petition, work visas. They're the one who are administrating and going through the forms and the petitions.
So the Department of Homeland Security is the governing body on top.
Exactly.
And then as far as immigration is concerned, there is the USCIS, which administers basically is the bureaucratic side of immigration.
Exactly.
And then there's ICE, which is the enforcement side.
Exactly. And then we
which
have the
is
border
also the party that takes legal action.
Exactly.
So if you're an immigration attorney and you're in court, the party on the other side is ICE.
It's Department of Homeland Security. It's the
ICE division of
exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
And then there's Border Patrol.
And then there's Border Patrol.
Okay. So for the purpose of clients, the two main bodies that you would be interacting with inside US would be USCIS
Yes.
or ICE.
USCIS majority of the time, and then ICE as well, which falls under the DHS, Department of
Have
Homeland
you had cases that argued in court?
Yes.
With ICE being on the other side or Department of Homeland Security?
Yes, I actually have a hearing on Monday.
Okay.
That,
What's the hearing about?
basically just a defensive approach of a person obtaining a visa or green card through family petition, but before we applied for this family petition, he was here without lawful status.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little more, because that's a common situation?
So basically, you fall into unlawful status in two different aspects. One is if you come here on a visa and you overstay your visa.
Okay.
And the other one is if you basically cross the border or come here without any status or permission. It's called admitted or parole.
Okay.
That's the two categories that you fall under. And whether you get caught by immigration enforcement agents and you go to the immigration court, or whether you apply to obtain
Legal status.
legal status through asylum, through different other approaches, you have to go to a defensive approach, which is in front of a judge in the immigration court.
It's a little technical question, but so you're saying if you're in US, on US soil, and you have no status, there are two ways to basically not have status. One is to come with a visa and overstay your visa.
Correct.
And one is to come to US somehow through a border without having a visa to begin with.
Correct.
Does the immigration system or USCIS view these two differently when you're trying to adjust status at some point?
Absolutely.
Very
good question.
What is the difference?
So if you come here without being admitted or paroled, means you come here illegally.
You come across the border, Mexico or Canada, or by sea. Somehow you end up here.
Exactly.
Okay.
Without being admitted or paroled, you come to US and you find some way to adjust your status, whether through family petition, whether through employer.
Family petition means marriage or
if you have a parent that's a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident or green card holder, and you find that way to adjust your status. Since your original or your initial entrance into United States was without being admitted or paroled, upon approval through the family petition or relative petition or employer, you have to exit the United States and go through the country consular process. It's very similar to if people never came to United States, want to migrate to US, they have to go through the consular process, which is in their country or if they don't have any relationship.
Let's just say someone is in US, they came illegally somehow, they met someone, they got married to a US citizen. Now, for them to receive adjustment of status, they have to leave US?
Exactly.
Does it matter what country they go to?
Usually they go to their own country because that's where they don't require a visa again to go to.
And how do they come back?
And then before you leave, you want to apply for what's called a waiver.
Okay.
It's basically explaining your situation to the UCIS again, paying the application fee, explaining that you're here unlawfully and you found a way to adjust status. You request a waiver, and upon the approval of the waiver, once you leave United States and you go through the consular process, you're not subject to a ban, because if you're in the United States less than 180 days, you're subject to a 3-year ban, which means you cannot enter the United States through any means.
Okay.
or if you're here more than 180 days, you're subject to a 10-year ban.
Okay.
But
This is a waiver of the ban.
exactly.
And is it easily granted or is it a complicated process?
I've applied for it several times, and most of the time, in my current situation for my clients, it was granted.
Okay. So on your day-to-day life, you're in court a lot. You're constantly in immigration court.
Yes.
What type of cases do you deal with? Are these asylum cases, adjustment of status cases? Are these marriage cases? Are these what type of cases
So
are you dealing with?
once you're in an immigration court and you're basically caught by ICE and you're either in detention center or you're now out of the detention center, you're in a defensive approach. So you basically in a removal proceeding. That's what it's called.
So we're talking about people that didn't have status.
Exactly.
And somehow they came across ICE.
Correct.
And now they're in ICE custody or now they're interacting with ICE.
Exactly.
So this is one group that you're dealing with.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes, which is the majority of my side of the practice. But I also have a lot of people who are here or not who are not here and trying to migrate to the United States through family petition or employer.
Okay, so we'll get to that. We're now talking about people with no status
Yes.
that have come in contact with the immigration system.
Correct.
And this is where you come in.
Yes.
This is one type of people
Yes.
that are in the removal proceeding or they've been charged.
Correct.
Okay. All right. What is the bulk of your work interaction? What do you do?
Basically, we're trying to find some sort of relief for them to stay here.
Okay.
We go through a lot of questioning, whether trying to see if they qualify for asylum, for cancellation of removal, for defense against deportation through different aspects or different categories of asylum. Because if you, as you know, asylum you have to apply within 1 year of arriving to the United States.
Okay.
However, if you're applying over a year, and it's been over a year or a couple of years now, you might not be qualified for asylum, but you might be qualified for withholding of removal.
Okay.
And then there's also a convention against torture that you might qualify for, depending on the condition of your own country.
Okay.
So basically, we're trying to find some sort of relief for these people to stay in the United States with their loved ones here, whether it's through a family petition, whether it's through an employer, whether it's through asylum, whether it's through U visa, whether it's through VAWA, depending on the person's situation and basically individual facts.
Each of these areas are a complete, like an hour interview because all of these are complicated
Exactly.
areas of law. So we can't really go into detail now. But there's one thing that's often misunderstood. People think immigration is mostly filing forms. It is a form-based system. But why do you think, or what in your experience, why is it important to have an attorney, a skilled attorney, on your side versus just doing it by yourself?
It's very important because, as you know, there's a lot of loopholes in immigration law, and as you know, immigration falls under the power or jurisdiction of also the president. So the president could change things every 4 or 8 years.
Okay.
And so this law is always evolving. It's always changing. There's new requirements. As you know, for example, recently added the, what was it called? The government's burden that you have to prove now recently. I forgot that. I cannot think of the name right now. But basically, if you're trying to get a green card through any means, you also have to prove now that you're not going to be government's burden, meaning that you're not going to use any governmental help or any civil help that offered it through the states.
This is new.
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
So it's always evolving and it's always changing. So it's very important to have an experienced attorney on your side to know these laws and know how it's applied, know how it went to the case that is basically created the law and what those facts are to tailor your facts similar to those so you have a higher chance of qualifying for it.
So I heard that, I don't know the source, I remember I read somewhere that out of, I don't know, let's throw a number, 1,000 people that are either detained or have come across immigration system for some reason, a very large number of them that have competent attorneys actually find a way to a successful result.
Exactly.
A lot of the cases that unfortunately don't end up in a good place is either because people don't know how to approach the system or they don't, I mean, I'm sure all attorneys are competent, so it's basically not having an attorney.
Exactly.
Is that what you think is
Yes,
the case?
I mean,
so it's quite possible to have some way for relief if you have a good attorney.
You have to raise it. You have to raise that relief. when the judge asks you in your first or second hearing what sort of relief you have, you have to be able to explain that, and also later on at the other hearings you have to prove it with evidence.
Okay.
So if you don't raise it, you don't get it.
Okay. So Sam, another, I don't know if it's misconception, but another point of hesitation for a lot of clients is cost. People maybe do not hire attorneys because they think it's too expensive, or it's going to be useless spending of money. I'm not here to tout, attorney services, but to get results, sometimes you do have to find someone who knows the way better than you.
Exactly.
So can you give us some understanding of what the cost is for a client? Generally, of course, cases are different.
Yes. I mean, for different avenues of adjusting your status or getting a lawful status here, or petitioning, there's different fees for the UCIS, the
Okay.
one that you have to pay for the application.
But those are regardless, you have to pay those anyway.
Absolutely,
Right.
yes.
So what are the attorney's fees?
Attorney's fees, for example, for a family petition is anywhere between $800 to $1,500,
Okay.
depending on the situation, depending on the amount of evidence, depending if you have to make translations of the documents,
Okay.
which most of the time is the case. Family petition is anywhere between $800 to $1,500. Attorney's
Family
fees.
petition means
Means-
somebody asking immigration for relief or a status adjustment for one of their loved ones.
Immediate relative, whether
Okay.
it's a son, wife, husband, parents.
What about asylum cases? What's the general cost?
Asylum cases are more on the expensive side because you basically have to appear more in front of the judge. You have to explain it more. It's basically like a trial base,
Okay.
at least on the defensive side of the approach. And they usually run a little bit higher, anywhere between 3,000 to 6,000 or 7,000.
But that's also substantially more amount of time spent.
Exactly. Yeah, substantially more, and you have to provide substantial amount more evidence.
So we have the asylum type cases, we have the family
Yes.
petitions. What other category would you use?
Employer. I
Employer.
would say employer would be
Okay.
another one, and there's also under the employment visa, there's 5 different categories that you could obtain a visa to come to the United States.
Okay.
Those run anywhere between 2,000 to 8,000.
Okay. Could you just briefly mention the 5 categories on the employment?
Sure.
What do employees, what type of cases can they bring forward to gain lawful status?
Sure. There's a most common one, which is EB1, which is if the employer in U.S. needs a worker that is applying for here, and it's unsuccessful, but found someone overseas in a different country that qualifies for it, and basically
The
wants to apply
employer
for that.
is the petitioning
Exactly.
body.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. What's the
And
second
then
one?
the second one is basically if you have an employer, if you're employed in a different country and that your employer has different
Offices,
branches
Yes.
in the United States, and they want to basically transfer you here,
Okay.
they could do so
All right.
and get you a permanent residency.
Great.
Actually. The other one is somewhat uncommon, but still occurs, is, for example, falls under the people or the agencies or companies that help United States military, whether in Afghanistan
The
or Iraq.
contractors.
Exactly.
Okay.
They aided and helped, translated.
Yes.
They could qualify for it under
Okay.
that category. There is also investments.
Okay.
If you basically want to open up a business in U.S., you could do so through 2 different ways. There's different requirements and different documents that you need to provide with that, obviously. But it's also through it's
So
investment.
if you're someone lives in a different country, let's say you live in Russia or I don't know Germany, and you have some money, you want to move to US, you can invest money in the US,
Correct.
and through that process you can gain status.
Correct. Or you could open up a business from scratch.
Okay.
There's different requirements for that, obviously.
Okay.
But you could also do that as well.
Perfect.
The price of it, the requirement or the money requirement to invest or open up a business, it's substantially more, but
Okay.
it's definitely doable.
Good. So my understanding is that the bulk of your work has to do with asylum cases, family petitions. Is that correct?
Yes, and then defense against removal,
Okay.
through cancellation of removal, through withholding of removal, through convention against torture. There's different areas that falls under.
Um, what are the top challenges for you as an immigration attorney day to day?
Currently, right now, it's the amount of time you have to wait. As you know, the UCIS have closed all in-person contact
Okay.
with petitioners or applicants. So it was already backlogged, but because of the coronavirus and all the immigration executive orders that are being took place, it's being delayed a lot more. So, for example, if you were to wait for a simple family petition for a spouse, if we would take anywhere between 8 months to a year, now we've seen a year and a half and 2 years maybe.
Do different jurisdictions in US have different timelines and processes, or is it all the same?
Yes, they do. So it depends on the amount of caseload and the amount of immigrant in that office or in that jurisdiction. For example, California takes way longer, obviously.
Okay.
But other states like Florida or
With less
immigrants
population.
coming in, exactly, because
Okay.
it's not a border state,
Right.
so there's not a lot of interaction with immigrants. It would take less because they basically have less files to go through.
So, what are your main challenges with clients, and what would you recommend a client to do before they come to meet an immigration attorney, or how can you make their lives easier?
A very
What's
that's a
the
very good question.
What's the bottleneck with a lot of clients? What can clients avoid through having interaction with an attorney that prepares them? What can you do to
I
make
would
things?
absolutely highly recommend everyone who's trying to hire an immigration attorney, or have an immigration case, to do their own research. Not extensive research, just a basic one, so they have an idea of
Right.
what they want and what their qualifications are and what they need to provide. For
Okay.
example, as far as evidence, whether it's birth certificate, whether it's marriage license, whether it's a previous divorce decree, whether they have to get translation for those documents. It prepares them a lot more. It makes them more comfortable with the process, and it also makes their case much faster
Okay.
when they do that and they come prepared to meet
So,
with an attorney.
would you say the bottleneck with you, not you as an attorney, with some clients might be maybe an unrealistic or unreasonable expectation with regard to outcomes or timelines?
Exactly. Yes.
Is that
absolutely.
correct?
Yes, that's certainly the case.
By you saying people should do their own basic research is for them to know what are the reasonable timelines. I can expect shorter time or longer time. This is roughly what the time is.
Exactly. I'll give you
Okay.
a very good example. If you
Yes.
are applying for a spouse through family petition, you're married, and you want to bring your non-immigrant husband or wife to United States, and you're married under 2 years, so basically you were married to him or her within 2 years of applying for family petition, they would require more evidence to prove that your marriage was entered into in good faith, right? So it requires more documents because, as you know, they want to
Right.
make sure that the marriage is actually real and
Right.
they're not doing it for the purpose of getting immigration status. So you need to provide more information. There could be absolutely interviews. They ask you very specific questions, and if you basically don't provide the same kind of answers, your application could get denied.
Okay.
So it's very important to know the basics of it and do a little bit of research as to understanding the process. Because a lot of times, if you don't know it and you provide files mistakenly, you provide false information as different as to your spouse, then your application is going to get denied.
Right. I think that's one of the most common areas of problems when there's inconsistency in answers or they seem to be not correct
Exactly.
to the officer.
Yes.
And then so cleaning that up is probably going to take some time.
Absolutely.
What else should clients, potential or prospective clients, know about immigration services and immigration attorneys? What do you have in closing? What kind of recommendations or
A
comments?
lot
would you
of
like to-
times, people don't know what type of relief they could qualify for. They
Okay.
might have some sort of relief that they're not aware of it.
Okay.
that could make him a lawful status in the United States.
Right.
Something has happened to him before. They have interaction with police officers. They were a victim of a crime. They don't know that those things could qualify them in their immigration status here in U.S.
Right.
So it's very important to basically get a consultation with an attorney. Most of the time it's free. Get a consultation so the attorney could ask him all the questions and all the things that they need to ask them to see if whether or not they have any relief to qualify for.
Perfect.
So a lot of times,
Just a simple
Clients-
phone call can resolve a lot of things.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
This is mainly one of our focus areas of focus in this firm is that immigration is such a sensitive and sensible subject to so many people. And we as immigrants want to make this easier. We want to make this more, it's a human to human level. It's not an attorney sitting here in a chair and you there. We're together and we're gonna solve problems. That's really what we're trying to do. And so having competent attorneys on your side, on our team, that's what we're aiming to do. Help people with their problems. That makes us feel better as well.
Absolutely.
Would you do anything else besides law if you weren't a lawyer?
No, I really like being a lawyer. I really like helping people accomplishing things that they want to accomplish in life and in a legal matter, obviously, and basically get that assistant,
That's a good
provide that
answer.
assistant. Yeah.
That means you're in the right track.